Hi, and welcome back to Melissa's Kitchen. I am your host, Melissa, and today we are doing part one of a three-part series. We're going to make lasagna from scratch, and today's session will be the pasta. This is a very old recipe, and it's been kind of modified because it's really tiring to do it the old-fashioned way. This is a pasta that my mom used to make with me when I was little, and her grandmother used to make with her when she was little. I think somewhere along the line it skipped a generation because my grandmother was your very typical Italian little old lady, except that she didn't cook. That was the only thing that was unusual about my grandmother. But my great-grandmother made this pasta, this recipe, and I'm sure she came here from Italy as a child, as a young adult, we'll say. And I'm sure for generations before her, they used the same recipe. So what we're going to do is, I'm all by myself today, so hopefully I've got everything that I need, and I don't need an assistant or a director or a second camera. I've got my second camera set up. Hopefully, one thing I'll warn you about is it's on an autofocus. It's on my phone, and I can't stop that. So if it gets dizzying, I apologize. So what we're going to do with the way this recipe has been modernized. Hi, thank you. The way this recipe has been modified is I am using a stand mixer, my trusty old KitchenAid. I don't have the energy to do it by hand anymore. So we'll start with 3 cups of flour. 3.5 cups of flour, sorry. Put that right in the bottom. My flour container is a little small. So don't mind me. And you'll probably see I've already got flour all over the place, but you're going to need flour all over the place anyway. I've already made one batch so that this part isn't taking too long. So that we have 3.5. I'll put this aside because we will be using that shortly. And along with the 3.5 cups of flour, we have 1 tablespoon of salt. I'm going to mix that together just a little bit. Now, the old-fashioned way to make this is to mix your flour and salt, dump it in a heap in the middle of your table, and make a big hole in the middle to start mixing in your eggs. I don't have the energy for that, so we're going to use my stand mixer. So that's pretty well mixed in there. I'm going to use my shield because this can get a little crazy. I'm missing the other half of it, but I think you get the idea. We're going to start mixing with the paddle blade. I'm going to lock it down because it does tend to jump a bit. So I'll add 1 egg at a time to get the ball rolling. I got it on see, it's already starting to go all over the place. And we have a little bit of, sorry about that second camera. Not exactly sure where the other half of my thing went, but it's alright, we'll use the flour later. It does tend to get a little clumpy, but it ends up mixing together really well. So once the eggs are all done up, we're going to start adding a little bit of water. We use between 4 and 5 tablespoons. I generally tend to get through all 5 tablespoons a little at a time. Hi, everybody. This is a recipe that I used to make as a kid with my mom a lot, but as an adult, I've not had as much time to make pasta. And I've only just gotten back to making bread regularly in the past year or two to three maybe. So now we got everything mixed together. So I don't need this any longer. Don't need this any longer. Pull out all of the dough. Get it all together by hand. With a little knead, I'm going to put my dough blade on. Then we can start mixing by the dough blade a little bit to help to knead it. And this really does help. It's really actually quite difficult to over-knead pasta dough like it is with bread dough. Bread dough you can over-knead really badly. Pasta dough is a lot more difficult, so if you don't feel you've gotten to the right point yet, don't worry about giving it a few more minutes if you feel like you maybe should. It's really easy to tell the elasticity of it. I'm going to turn it up a little bit. I usually bring the mixer up to like a 5 or a 6. It is going a little crazy here. At max, I don't usually put it any higher than that. Right now, let it re-engage. Usually only need a couple minutes worth of mixing. And then I'll abandon the mixer altogether and finish kneading by hand. And then you don't even need it all that much at that point. So if it gets a little too sticky, make sure your surface is floured. Then you can flour your hands and the dough itself, because you don't want it to be too sticky, and you're going to use a lot more flour throughout making the dough anyway. So it's just a matter of really beating it down, getting to take your frustrations out on it if you need to. But it does work a lot of your muscles too. I made some a couple of weeks ago and woke up the next morning with all my abdomen muscles sore. So I didn't even feel like I was using any of those muscles, but I guess they're muscles that you don't use often. So now we have our dough. And hopefully you can see. It is pre-stress reliever and pre-workout, you're right. So here's the basic dough. And an easy way to tell if it's kneaded enough, just push down on it and see if it kind of bounces back together. And if it has a little bounce back, you know you're good with your dough. So next thing you want to do with that dough is put it on a plate with some flour or something with flour and cover it with some plastic wrap and let it sit for half an hour or so. Some people say a little longer, some people say not that long. So this is one I made earlier and it's ready to be cut up. Now we'll let this one sit now for half an hour. Then I'll have 2 batches. So right now I'm going to make lasagna. In half an hour I'll probably make some spaghetti or something else to let dry and use at another time. Another thing you can do is make the dough and freeze it and use it at any time. It's really, as you can probably tell, not that difficult to make. So I'm going to flour my surface, the dough. I'm going to cut this into four pieces to make it easier to work with. I like to flour my knife. It sticks a little less. So we'll work with one of the four pieces. I use a little bit more flour. Now this one might be a little bit difficult for me. This is my pasta roller, and usually it has this little area to clip down to whatever surface you're working to, but that's kind of a small spot for me. It won't quite fit, so we'll test this out and see how it goes. So right now we're set at the thickest setting, which is number 7 on mine. We're just going to start running it through. Flatten out just a little more. It's a little bit more difficult when you can't clamp it down. Just make sure you don't have anything loose when you're doing this, because you might get stuck in there, and if you're going too fast, you might just end up hurting yourself. Get all the way through, and I'm going to run this, just fold it over again, run this through several times to get it thinner, and then we will decrease the thickness as we go. Each time of the same thickness, we will fold it in half. Sometimes people do it in thirds depending on the machine they use. So this machine can be a pain in the butt. Just a little bit. It really is easier when you have a thinner workspace that you can clamp it down. You don't have to hold it at the same time. So now I'm going to put it one down. Make it a little bit thinner. After we get it to the desired thickness for lasagna, which I like mine a little bit thinner, but you can't use it too thin because then the lasagna itself won't hold together, and it just kind of makes a big old mess. It'd be easier with 2 people doing this. So we're going to go this way. Put it down one more time. Try to get a little bit in the middle, just to get those edges. And you guys probably already saw some of the other pasta ones. But my family really loves my homemade lasagna, so I figured it might be a good show anyway. Pop. Alright, so now we're going to bring it down even more. And my little machine here goes from 7 being the thickest to 1 being the thinnest. So we started at 7, down to 6, now we're at 5. And we'll keep this going down to, we'll see how a 3 looks. And we might stick with the 3. If it's not quite thin enough, we'll go down to a 2, but I wouldn't do a 1 for a lasagna. Now, if anybody caught my show on Saturday and saw my appetizer show and saw me attempt to cut phyllo dough, you probably got a good laugh because maybe not quite the person to stay in the lines. And that was interesting. But you're going to see it again here because I don't have a lasagna cutter handy. So I'll be cutting my lasagna by hand. If I ever get it done. Alright, so now we're going to hit down to 4. Another thing you can do if you're getting really too long, just cut it in half and go from there. Flip that over again. Okay, nice and thin and nice and long. Run that through one more time without pulling it. Flatten it out even more. Now we're getting pretty long. And even thinner. This is when it starts getting easier. It's getting a little long. So I'm going to cut it in half. Make it a little easier to work with. Fold it in half and go one more round. Now, I had a lot of people watching on Saturday when I did the appetizer show. It ran almost 2 hours. Unfortunately, because we haven't officially launched yet, I couldn't interact with most of them because they were all of my friends. I'll fold it over this way this time. Spread it out a little. Not like that much. That didn't quite work. So just fold it back the other way. All right, we're gonna go a little lower. We'll get there eventually, I promise. Half that way. My husband asked if I was going to roll this by hand, which I just laughed. It's not something I do. I'd be here forever. And I've worked at pizza shops when I was a kid, but I was never the one throwing the pizza up in the air, because that's just not me. We're getting it nice and thin with the pasta itself. A few more times. I'm going to give it one more thinness. And that should do lovely for the lasagna noodles. Ouch! That did not feel good. That was my crank just fell out onto my foot. Alright, so we've got it nice and thin. I'm going to give it one more through. Then you can watch me attempt to cut it. Alright. So, put these back in the bowl. I'm not going to use my decorating board because it's a little short. Powder my workspace. Flour, not powder. Everyone use powder. Trim up the edges. So it doesn't look all raggedy. Now, when you're making lasagna, you want your noodles to be a little bit less than 2 inches. So, about 1 3/4 inch will work per noodle. And I tend to make it in a really big pan, not a 9 by 13, because that won't be big enough for my family. So this one's actually thick enough that I can just cut it right down the middle. And they're a little thin width-wise, not thickness-wise, but they will do. And you've got 2 to start with. It's a lot of work, but it is definitely worth it. So I will make these, and somewhere around here, I have my noodle dryers, which happen to be wire hangers. Just take your wire hanger, slip it over, let it dry, hang it from something, just let them dry like candlesticks. And after a day or so, they're nice and dry, and they can be used. If you want, you can cut whatever you'd like, spaghetti. If you want to make spaghetti, you can use it immediately. Again, you can use it immediately. You can let it dry. You can put it in the fridge for 24 hours and then use it, or you can freeze it. Those are all the options. So I'm going to let these dry, and tomorrow I am going to come back and we're going to make ground meat for the lasagna, and we're going to make the sauce for the lasagna. And then later tomorrow evening, we will put everything together and you'll be able to see the finished product. So thanks for coming. Eat well, enjoy, and I will see you tomorrow for part 2. Thanks.